Call this meeting of the Vallecitos Water District together, April 2nd. I'd like to have the Pledge of Allegiance first, and we'd like to bring up Robert Shaw. Robert? Do the honor.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Robert. Roll call.
Director Evans?
Here.
Director Maddox?
Here.
Director Hilton?
Here.
Director Martin?
Here. I'd like to adopt the agenda for the regular meeting of April 2nd.
Move to adopt.
Motion? Second. Have a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, we're gonna have a presentation by our own Alicia Yarman on the Water Academy, or what she just did. You can explain it.
Mr. President, members of the board, it's my pleasure to introduce Alicia Yerman. She is on my staff as a public information representative, been with us 5 years in this position, 5 years, but she's been with the district 11 years. Yeah, she was with engineering as well, so she's very well-rounded. And without further ado, I'm going to let Alicia tell you about the national conference she recently spoke at, the AWWA WEF Utility Conference in Savannah, Georgia. So very honored to have her speak for us.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and members of the board. First, I would like to thank the board for their support and feedback for the Water Academy Tour. I would also like to thank management and all the staff involved, especially Lisa Urabi and Tori Webb. Lisa's a great leader, and I appreciate her allowing me speaking this afternoon. Planning a large function such as the Water Academy was a team effort, and everyone worked very, very hard for the Water Academy Tour and its award-winning community outreach event. I feel honored to be representing the district as a speaker in the technical program at the AWWA WEF Utility Management Conference. I spoke approximately 25 minutes about the Water Academy Tour and also showed a PowerPoint presentation. Approximately 800 people attended the conference, and about 150 to 250 people attended to hear the Water Academy Tour. For the public involvement and community engagement segment of the conference, a total of 3 panel speakers, including myself, presented for the technical program. The goal of my speech was to tell people how to plan a Water Academy tour. I explained the details of arranging the event, organizing presentations at our award-winning facilities, key staff involved, security concerns, the lessons learned, and how we obtained measurable results from our customer feedback forms. For example, their feedback forms indicated customers' knowledge before the tour was very poor. And after taking the tour, they learned a great deal about the main drivers of the water rates and how the district is diversifying its water portfolio for future resource planning, and also how the district is striving to rely less and less on imported water. I explained how we achieved our goal to educate the customers, how the tour highlighted our expertise of staff, and the cost benefit of putting an event such as this one. Best of all, we received free word-of-mouth advertising. A couple of utility managers came up to me and said they learned a lot about my speech, and it made them think about the prospects of planning an event like this at their agency. Although some of the other agencies have school tours and public tours, I believe a free Water Academy educational charter bus tour is a first of its kind. Some of the questions asked by the utility managers and conference attendees were, what were the reasons for putting on an event like this? I responded that most important was operational transparency and to focus on what we do, how our customers get their water, and especially where the water comes from. They had questions about water security. I showed maps on my presentation. They were concerned about us showing the maps, and I explained in engineering that's always available to the public, and we had security measures in place. They also wanted to know what were the reasons behind putting on an event and what was the best method of advertising. I talked about the strategic planning, our goals, and our outreach was a big component of this plan. I also explained that the Splash newsletter and the water quality report were our best method of advertisement besides word of mouth. They also enjoyed the pictures of the tour, and I also explained to them, they had questions about the pictures, and I explained that we took a lot of pictures at the event, and then we hired a professional photographer to highlight our facilities and also our staff. They wanted to know, the attendees wanted to know, how long did this planning take? And I explained it took about 6 months of planning, but it can be done in a month if you have an overflow of people that are interested, but it is a lot of work. I was the first speaker, and I think the type of speech was a good start to the conference. People love pictures of California, and it was a very upbeat environment to start the conference proceedings with community engagement and public involvement. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak at this conference, and I'm very grateful. I would also like to thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Alicia. Board?
I would like to thank you for speaking, and I also want to thank you for being born right here in the district. You don't look old enough to have been here that long. That was very kind of your parents. I'm very impressed with the Academy, but I didn't realize you had gone to Savannah, Georgia, and spoke to that large organization, and that's well done.
Thank you.
I love your answers. Questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, she's from New Jersey.
But
You mean the districts?
but I picked up another accent, y'all.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a lot of
I'll try
y'alls.
not to remember that.
Okay.
Alicia, I just like to say I think that's great, and I know you did a great job out there. Thank you very much, and thank you for what you're doing. I'm looking forward to taking the tour on May 3rd, because I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet.
Great,
So I don't know if any other board members who haven't had the opportunity to make that one or not, but I will certainly be there.
great.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
If I might, the district has also been nominated for the California, let me get the acronym right here, California Association of Public Information Officers in their outreach and innovation category for the state of California, so we're in the top 3. We don't know if we're first, second, or third yet for that award, but it'll be decided on April 11th. So we'll let you know.
Terrific. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Alicia.
Al?
Yes.
Is this tour on the 3rd? Is this our first Saturday tour now?
Yes, this is our first Saturday tour.
How is it going right now for,
Right now, we have about 15 people signed up without any advertisement,
How
a lot
many?
of word of mouth, 15. Our Splash newsletter is going out next week, so we anticipate a lot of response.
excellent.
And again, the only qualifier is that they actually live in the district that's serviced by us.
Customers of
This is
Vallecitos.
our customer outreach.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very nicely done.
All right. Under oral communications, which is next, persons wishing to address a matter not on the agenda may be heard at this time. However, no action will be taken until the matter is placed on a future agenda in accordance with board policy. We have one speaker, Michael Hunsaker.
Mike Hunsaker, 115 Equestrian Court, San Marcos. As you're aware, I'm working with some mobile home parks on doing some conversion of the utilities. We're finding more and more difficulties as we go along, and water continues to be the most pressing issue and the most possibly intractable. We have a program started for gas and electric, as these are obvious safety issues. But we're also coming across safety issues with sewers in particular and some water. Some of these parks have private services. They use old piping, which can use lead. The new services require at least 20-foot easement that cannot be shared with water. And some mobile home parks have their utilities all running in the same place. So this requires considerable work with water. The program that's coming up recognizes that water is going to be a major issue, and one of the factors that's coming up is water capacity and hookup. A typical park may use 1/3 the water of a single-family dwelling. They have virtually no landscaping, no water for laundry, and as a consequence, they use very little water. But if they have to do a hookup to a 3/4 inch line to become part of the district system, then there is a very heavy hookup fee. We're looking at changing the electrical and power for perhaps $1.5 to $2 million, but just the hookup fees for one medium-sized park can be over $2 million. This becomes a big problem. We want to fold the CUPC, Public Facilities Utilities Commission, I believe it is, this program, and unite it with water so that it becomes something that is doable and not an insurmountable quagmire. I would like to know who would be the appropriate authorities we should talk to. The CPUC apparently doesn't necessarily cover water in its program. We're going to need an interagency effort to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you for your opinions, Mr. Hunsaker.
If I might, Chair, on this.
I don't like to engage in conversations.
No, I want the board to know I'm not addressing Mr. Hunsaker. We will be responding to Mr. Hunsaker. The mobile home park into itself is private on site. It has nothing to do with Vallecitos. The capacity fees that are paid for the existing meter is adequate for the park, and the sewer fees that are already paid for the park are adequate. So assuming they don't add any additional units inside the park, as far as water and sewer fees for Vallecitos is concerned, we have no impact nor involvement.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
I have a question. Yes, sir?
I was reading something recently about apartments, and kind of in the same fix, where they were talking about maybe putting meters on individual apartments.
Yes. There's a provision, I don't know if it was approved in the building code or not, any new projects coming for us condominiums and things like that, they're going to start requiring sub-metering, and that's purely for a conservation effort so that people know that they're using too much water. That is private. It does not involve additional capacity fees or in any way involve us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just for my own edification, that's a meter after the meter? Is that what I'm
Sub-meter.
understanding?
That's correct.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Notice to the public on a consent calendar, looking for approval of the consent calendar. So
Second.
moved. Looking for a second. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, action items 2.1.
Ready?
I'm sorry, I didn't approve the minutes, did I?
Yeah. That was part of the consent.
Thank you.
There's a, if you want to come up, Rob, I'll kind of lead into it. There is a staff memo in the agenda that identifies the strategic plan, the items we go through on a 5-year basis as far as a master plan, plus what it covers. That begins on page 18, by the way. Mr. Scholl here will be the engineer coordinating the project and running it through its termination, or to the end of it. There are 2 parts today. One is the actual master plan document itself. One of the items is recycled water, alternative water supplies, et cetera. That's not identified as a definitive component of the master plan. It's the second item. It's item 2.2 you have today before you. Item 2.2, which Rob will do a presentation on that as well, is something that the board talked about last year, actually around the same time, which was recycled water, IPR, DPR, should we, shouldn't we, how it ties into the whole North County project, everything else. So what we did was when they negotiated and went through the scope on the contract, and Rob will get into this a little more detail, we asked for a separate scope because there was some conversation at the board level on the cost, the value, the benefit. So to do it as a separate item so the board could take separate action whether they wanted to pursue it or not. That way it doesn't interfere with moving forward on the master plan, because the master plan also involves the urban water management plan, which has to work concurrently with the water authority. So there's a lot of steps here. So the memo is there, and I'm sure Rob will be happy to answer any questions on that, but he does have a presentation on the process that we went through, as well as what the document will look like.
I have a question to start with, Rob. Maybe you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been with the district? Have you been through this process before? What your background is? Because you're going to be the person in charge of this, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, President Martin, members of the board. My name is Robert Schull. I'm the Capital Facilities Engineer. I have been at the district now approximately 7.5 years. Background, of course, is engineering there. I have done master plans in the past. I've worked on the district's 2008 master plan and program EIR. I've also worked on other agency program environmental impact report documents as well. For instance, when I was at Otay Water District. So I've probably been in the industry now, I'd say about 14 years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hernandez?
Well, I'm not sure that it's in here, I didn't see it, but the scope of work, are we gonna be presented with the scope of work that is within the study as to what they're going to study and exactly what they're going to do? I mean, unless I'm.
If you would let us go through the presentation, I think we'll answer all your questions.
Sorry, there you go.
Yeah.
No
Yeah,
wonder
don't worry.
study.
I've got a very exciting presentation for you here on the 2014 master plan.
All right.
I promise this to be longer and much more detailed than any presentation in finance that Tom can come up with.
Oh, thank you.
Liz, I need to call
Thank
home,
you.
tell them I'm gonna be late.
That's not exactly true, but hopefully, yes, it is educational there. Before I get started here, I'd like to introduce our team here for the 2014 master plan at Black and Beach. Maybe I can get them to stand here. The project manager would be James Strayer from Black and Beach. Alyssa Muto is to his right. She would be the manager of the program environmental impact report. She's with Recon. And then James's support staff there from Black and Beach includes Scott Lynch and Kyle McCarty.
Thank you. Nice meeting you. Staff's put a lot of confidence in you.
I think Alicia got started talking about the strategic plan objectives there when she was talking about her trip to Savannah, so I'll kind of continue on that. The 2014 master plan, it addresses two of the strategic focus areas of the district's master plan. That would be focus area number 1, which is the infrastructure integrity. You can see we hit 3 of the strategies on that, and then on focus area number 6, we're also hitting resource exploration. You'll see here I did kind of gray out strategy 6.2, but just keep this slide in mind here because when we get to our next topic here on the recycled water business plan, I'll come back to this same slide here and show that strategy 6.2 is being hit with that report there. So to get started here, what's the purpose of the master plan? The master plan serves as our planning tool. This is a tool for the district to anticipate and plan for growth within the district. If I can kind of put the master plan in a nutshell, basically we start with the getting the land uses, and then we get the demands for the land uses, and then we plug those water and sewer demands into our water and sewer models. And those water and sewer models will basically tell us what pipelines, reservoirs, pump stations, lift stations that we need to either build or expand upon to accommodate future growth. The master plan also has a water resources and supply component to it. We will study supply alternatives in the master plan. You'll see quite a few of them listed here. Conservation, desalination, groundwater, and of course the recycled water business plan, that is to be prepared separately. That could be also another component. And as far as the master plan goals and objectives, the goal of the master plan is to provide a reasonable approach to accommodate plan development within the district. This is going to identify all of our infrastructure problems that we can foresee over at least the next 20 years and also into ultimate build-outs. It's going to give us growth projections, which is going to assist us when we determine our capital facilities that are required and also when Tom reevaluates the capital facilities fees. And of course, this is also providing our base water and wastewater demands for our upcoming 2015 Urban Water Management Plan. This is just giving a brief history of a lot of the master plans that the district has done over the last almost 40 years now, starting with the 1975 master plan. And you can see starting in 2005, we also added in urban water management plans. So starting here with the basic part of the master plan here, and that is obtaining the approved land uses from the land use agencies. The district itself is not the land use agency. We get that information from the cities that we serve, as well as the county of San Diego. We also obtain SANDAG
Quick
population estimates. I'm sorry, sir.
I'm sorry, quick question. The information you're getting from Sandag, is you're basing it on the estimates you're gonna be using from Sandag is based on what year? What year are you looking out until? Because Sandag now looks out further.
Yes.
Is that what this is gonna reflect?
Yeah, it's going to reflect basically existing population through 2035.
So for us, build out.
Build out actually will come after 2035. It's an indeterminate year. We haven't set a date for ultimate build outs. That's just saying sometime in the future, all of this is theoretically built out and per the approved land use.
Thank you.
And SANDAG, they have released their Series 13 information, which is what we propose using here. This does contain the 2010 census information. So basically, the duty factors these are basically your average water and sewer demands for your various land use categories. We obtain the land use, which comes in various categories from residential to commercial to industrial, for examples. Each of these carries a different water and sewer demand with it. And how we obtain these demands, how we come up with these demands, well, quite a few sources actually. We take readings from all of our meter accounts from basically 2002 to 2013. All of our flow meters there we have in our system, we take reads from there as well. We will compare the water meter reads with the sewer meter reads that we have, because you should see a little bit more water usage than sewer usage, and based on your land use, you'll get a different ratio. And then you also look at comparisons of the duty factors utilized in previous master plans as well to see if we need to make any adjustments. And of course, oh, yes ma'am.
If I may?
No.
What's the duty factors? I'm just drawing a blank.
Duty factors are basically, if you have a land use there, this is your average water demand for a certain land use, or your average sewer demand for a certain land use.
Okay.
And we will use other agencies' duty factors as well when coming up with our duty factors.
And as part of this comparative review, will the master plan look at what we believe the demand is and what we know it is based on the readings that you get from sewer and water? And so we'll actually know how much water we're using and how much sewer we're taking away.
Yes, sir. Actually, the 2008 master plan was a great example. What we did in there we listed a water table that had the actual uses, average water demands for each of the different land uses. And so we anticipate having something very similar in this master plan as well.
Yeah, these aren't estimates, these are definitive numbers.
Very good.
Yeah.
And that will be compared to.
You'll see the next slide, you'll see how we
Okay.
look at that.
Thank you.
Right. And I have a little note here, workshop number 1. Staff anticipates coming back there with a workshop once we come up with some draft duty factors there to share with the board what we've come up with so far.
Is that a public workshop or is that an informational workshop to the board?
We are anticipating it being a special board meeting or a workshop for the board, which is an open meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that was what we had discussed
Mhm.
in our strategy. So would you schedule that at the 6 o'clock hour so that we can, as we have asked, see if that
You bet.
population is going
You
to
bet.
storm the walls?
Not, and not to interrupt your presentation at all, but could you possibly give us a calendar right now, so a lot of these questions are answered?
You're going to see a calendar in a little bit
Okay.
on the thing right here, and we'll provide this PowerPoint presentation to you afterwards.
You have
But
a
it's-
very inquisitive board, if you notice, we always ask a page or two too soon.
Yeah.
So it's
Maybe we
like.
should just shut up.
Yeah, there is a
Slow
rough
down.
calendar for the next 2 years, and then
Okay.
some of it, once we actually award it and they start getting the data, then we'll start firming.
Okay, we'll
This is
wait for the
probably not
calendar.
until,
I'm just gonna wait.
this is probably not till November, December, would be my guess.
So basically, the next two tables here, the first one here being our water duty factors, this is what we've done in previous master plans for our duty factors. You'll see in 2008, with that master plan, we did add 2 additional residential land use categories because we're starting to see greater density residential within our district boundaries here. So this is the water, and this is the sewer. And so we always compare, like I said, what we're proposing, our duty factors, with these previous duty factors as well.
Yes, please.
In doing this, and maybe this is a question that's really more appropriate for the workshop, as a district, are we allowed to estimate or put in an expectation of conservation? In other words, if our history is showing we're using 150 gallons per person, but our real goal was we wanted to encourage conservation down to 120, is that ability, do we have an ability, maybe that's a legal question, to add that into what we want to say we will provide to the communities?
Part of the approach here, as you can see, we're showing you the 91, 97, 2002, 2008. The reason we do that is you go through cycles of everything. Part of the conservation we've seen over the last 5 years hasn't been conservation, it's been economy. So what we have is we have a goal in conservation through our urban water management plan. I think there's 11 or 12 BMPs, best management practices in there, that gets us to the goal. We're actually at our goal. We're at our 20 by 20 now. We've already achieved the 20% curtailment we need to achieve. So our numbers right now do in fact include that reduction. What we do now is, because that's in place, we take those numbers and we project them forward. So we make the assumption, because we do have conservation in place, that that number will carry forward. So what happens is the conservation goal is to maintain the conservation. We can probably get more, but that's going to come over life as people in California and San Diego decide they don't need grass. So it's going to be an evolution. So every 5 years, what you'll see, if the conservation continues, you'll see a dropping of number as it goes forward. So we're not mandating it, we're saying this is what we're planning for based upon conservation.
But if we wanted it to be more so, if we hadn't reached our 2020 yet,
Mhm.
do we have the ability?
You have the ability
As an
to,
agency,
you have the ability to
encourage
do 2 things. You can do water budgeting, which is you're going to tell the homeowner, the business owner, the property owner, this is how much we think you need, period. You can't deny them water beyond that. You can't say, no, this is all you get. What you do is you establish your tier rate structure.
Budget
So,
tier.
yeah, so you deal with conservation. I hate to say it, you can only get through so much out of the psyche. The rest you have to get out of the pocket, the wallet. And so what you do is you would develop a tier structure that might go from twice the rate to 4 times the rate to 8 times the rate. That's how you force the conservation.
Okay. That was one way. You said there were 2.
Well, water budgeting is one, and so I said you establish a tier, that the normal tiers, tier 1 and 2, is a normal rate that the water budget will support, and then if they go beyond it, you got to get them through the wallet.
So we have an ability if we choose to do that.
Yes, money-wise.
And you'll see here in a few slides, when I do have the schedule, I'll have the schedule also for the urban water management plan, which that is the document that it takes basically the demand information from the master plan, and then if we're short or whatever, it does have, as Dennis stated, best management practices that we could utilize or recommend to get us to the goal that we want to get to.
Thank you.
Question for you. In the new categories, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, which is what this city is going to be going to more and more, through BMPs, do we see those numbers, the numbers that we put there for 2008? They're not real numbers because we don't know what they are, the guesstimates, but yet when builders are building, low flow, low flush, low everything, no landscaping. Is that a real number? That's just a guesstimation.
Well, the numbers are based on what we've historically seen in the district. So what we did for these land use categories is we took our high-density residential water and wastewater unit demands and used those and just kind of extrapolated for the greater densities. Now, when we get good affirmative data on this, we can make adjustments accordingly.
If I could on that, Director Martin, when we did do this, we did have some high density to compare it to. And when the board adopted the fees and the capacity fees last time, we did add a category for this because they have reduced water and reduced sewer. I think it was 180. Close, I think it's about 180 instead of the 250 because of the fact that they're packing them in, there's just no landscape. So we actually do have that in the current ordinance and policy now. We've got a few more now that we can look at, so it'll firm these numbers up as we go through the process.
Thank you.
Okay, so basically, we can find the duty factors for every single parcel within the district. And so doing that there, we can sum up all of our water and our wastewater demands within the district. And this is kind of what this table shows here is the middle column showing this is what our historical demands have been at the time of every one of our previous master plans. And then the column on the right shows this is what we're projecting for ultimate build out within that master plan. So this is for water, and then of course we have a table for sewer as well. And then the next step is once we have all of our water demands for all of our parcels, we can load what we call parcel level loading. We can load all of our information from our GIS infrastructure into our model. It's a very sophisticated model because we can put the demands at the actual point of the demands instead of just lumping them in like large areas. And so we'll run these in different time steps, approximately every 5 years for existing and then all the way through 2035, and then also for ultimate build out. For the water side, we'll run average day, max day, and peak hour scenarios. And for the sewer side, we'll run average day, peak dry weather, and peak wet weather scenarios. And it's really these peak scenarios that are the most important when we determine our capital improvement projects, because that'll definitely show where our deficiencies are within our water and wastewater systems. So from this, we'll generate capital improvement projects, such as new or undersized pipelines that need to be upsized, water storage, there are pumping capacity upgrades that need to be made. On the sewer side, again, pipelines, as well as our land outfall, we'll take a look at that. We'll look at pumping capacity and also treatment capacity. And this is where we propose to have a second workshop for the board here, is when we have a proposed capital improvement project list. And we'll kind of run the board through the whole process of how we came up with that. And this is an example here from the 2008 master plan of what the proposed CIP map can look like. Let's see if I get it. Basically, every CIP there will have a number to it. Pipelines start with P, reservoirs start with R, et cetera, et cetera. And as far as the capital improvement projects, we will phase these CIPs in 5-year increments, every 5 years up to 2035, and then we'll also have a phase that takes us all the way to ultimate build-outs. We'll come up with unit cost for all of our infrastructure. These costs there, of course, will be updated for the 2008 master plan. And the cost and descriptions, those will be generated for each project that we come up with. And it's these project costs that Tom uses when coming up with our capital facility fees.
Robert, did we do this in our last one as well?
Yes, sir. Yeah, very same procedure.
Well, then we should have something to measure back on. We're talking about doing this in the future, but we did this 5 years ago. Where are those numbers at? How close were we?
Okay, so for 5 years ago, when we did the last master plan, we went through this process here. When we did the 2002 master plan, we did a similar process. The timeframe does change a little bit there because we always go out another 5 years. And then starting in 2008, we started to look at some of the ultimate build-out as well.
There's not a direct correlation between last one and this one. What happens as far as planning, because again, we do capital facilities based upon what we project growth to be based on sand ag. So if something doesn't actually happen, we don't get the growth, we don't build the facility, it gets pushed out. So the key here is the water and wastewater demands. That's the biggest factor that drives everything we do. So if it shows that the water has stayed the same, then what we know is the facilities that we had planned are going to most likely be exactly the same, but when we build it, will likely change. They might say, no, this area is not going to build now, it's going to be this area.
And I understand, I guess I'm just asking, though, we have numbers from the last one you did, showing where the numbers should be in 2015.
Oh, the theory, yeah, but we haven't pulled all that together yet. That'll be part of this document. We look at where it should be versus where it is, and then we move forward.
Part of this document will show where it's been for the past 20 years, and
Where we think it's
what
going.
the actual was, and the guesstimation as well.
Yeah,
So show the difference.
yeah.
So we'll have an education.
Yeah, you're going to see charts that go this way, and the actual went this way. You can see others where it goes this way, but it should have gone that way.
Great.
But yeah, it's a living document, basically.
We'll see significant differences.
You're going to see big differences.
Yeah.
But that would be that's why you do your plans. So in other words, you're trying to get accurate numbers so that it's not a guess. It's not betting on what's going to happen in conservation. It's what's actual use out there. And so if we have a 5-year plan, we're going to be taking information during all those 5 years. And so for the next 5 years, it's going to revert back to the changes that have happened. So if people are using 150 gallons a day, it may go down to 120 or whatever. But so that's why we're doing these plans. Would that be correct?
And just, you know, that was why I wasn't questioning why, I was questioning, is there a point in time where we get to see this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm certainly not seeing it today.
Yeah, you
No.
only
I don't know when I'm gonna see it, because I haven't gotten to that calendar page yet.
A year
that
from now.
tells us when we're gonna see things, which I think would be important in the future for newer boards, to put that up front. Let them know when this stuff is happening and where we're at in the phase, because that way it stops us from asking a lot of questions. Thanks.
Great recommendation, actually, yeah, we'll add this in. Oh, stay. Okay, the other part of the master plan is to look at integrated water resources here. So it's kind of like what we call our IRP, or Integrated Water Resources Plan, kind of bunched in here with our master plan. We're going to look at different supply options that we have recently implemented, such as our purchase of 3,500 acre-feet a year of Carlsbad desalinated water. It's going to look at our 2,750 acre-feet a year of OMWD treated water that we've recently purchased. It's also going to evaluate other options that we haven't implemented that we might want to look at here in the future as well, such as getting in there with local treatment facilities. This could include groundwater banking and, of course, conservation. Recycled water, indirect potable reuse, direct potable reuse, all of that is being proposed to address in the recycled water business plan at the board's pleasure. And then I want to touch real briefly here on the environmental document here. Anytime you put a master plan together, you're required to study its impacts as of CEQA there, the California Environmental Quality Act. So our program EIR, you'll see all the different constituents here that will be hitting, everything from land use to biology to air quality to energy. Get ahead of myself there. So once the draft EIR is completed, we will be back before the board there to recommend authorizing public review of the documents. The public review is a 45-day public review where the public gets to look at the document, comment, and send us comments on it. And as part of that public review process, we also have a public hearing that we usually hold here, right here in this room, where we describe the document there, and the public can attend there and ask questions as well. We'll respond to these public comments. We'll finalize the draft EIR, and we'll actually bring the final program EIR along with the completed 24 master plan back before the board for approval, probably sometime in a couple of years. And that kind of leads me into these workshops here. So just to recap, workshop number 1, we talked about when we put together the duty factors and the land use here. We'll come back before the board, discuss those. And then when we have a draft capital improvement program, we'll come back before the board. And then, of course, we'll want to present the final draft plan and receive comments before the board on that as well. So this is the schedule that you were looking at here, or you're asking about there. I know there's a lot of dates here. Don't let those intimidate you. It all kind of flows together. We're including the master plan here. We're including the program environmental impact report. And of course, we're including the 2015 urban water management plan efforts. So basically, workshops here, Dennis is saying that this first workshop, where you talk about the duty factors here, we're definitely talking late summer at the earliest before we're even ready for that workshop.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
This schedule is one that you're quite comfortable with, and your firm is quite comfortable with, and our staff is quite comfortable.
We're quite comfortable with this schedule.
So this is a schedule we can hold your feet to the fire.
It's,
Right?
it's a doable, because you see the very last dates down there of April. Those are some mandated, March. Those are some mandated dates that we do need to in fact hit. The biggest part of this, Director Martin, is we're running parallel with the Water Authority, because again, our demands, we take population and land use from the local jurisdiction and the county from Sandag. But our water demands that we assume we have available to us, we take those directly from the San Diego County Water Authority. So if we're cruising along here and we say we need 40 million gallons per day, and the Water Authority says, sorry, we're only planning on 27, we've got a big shortfall. So the schedule that we have right here tracks with the urban water management plan, which is already in process at the Water Authority. So there's a lot of pieces that have to run together. And so when we hit that March 2016, that's a pretty firm deadline that we have to hit. So it's a pretty good schedule.
That's a fantastic point, actually.
Well, it's also, that means in March, we're gonna be approving something that we put in place in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Makes no sense to me that you're approving 2014 and 2016.
Well, you're only
I understand
approving
that's
the
way it
document.
happens.
Yeah, we could call it the 2016 if you want.
Why do you call it 2014 when you don't approve it in 2016?
And that's when we started. Data. Just the date when we started collecting the data.
But- And that, Director?
Yes, sir.
And that was a question I had relative to the snapshot we take.
Yes.
Do we have, or how can we gain the variance there? Because we take this snapshot, and last time we took the snapshot, we had these two big projects, or at least one of them was right there on the fringe, but because it wasn't within the snapshot, it caused us some grief after the fact. If we know of the program projects, but they're not within our snapshot, can we add them into the study?
The short answer is no, unless you want to store it over on the master plan.
No, but What if
If you go back, and let me back up and
Yeah,
explain
go
why,
ahead.
there's three specific steps where we said we're going to bring this document before you. The first one's going to be when we've determined all the demands. Okay, that's based upon approved land uses and approved historic uses. Okay, so we bring that to you, and when you guys say that is good, the rest of the document takes off, and we're in process. So let's say we do the snapshot in time of April, May. Let's say June. That's our snapshot on land use. Okay, we're going to have gotten everything to that point. We're going to apply those factors, and these are our demands. This is where we're going. The board says, okay, looks good. Now all the work starts. That's data collection. Okay, now we start sizing pipes, sizing tanks, sizing pump stations. 6 months from then, Marion Mountain comes in again. It's a planned, it's not approved. We can't use a non-approved, we can't speculate that this is gonna be approved. We can't do that. We have to use approved land use. So if you say, well, hold it, we wanna wait till they do it, okay, that puts the master plan on hold for 6 months. Then we start again. That's why we do this. The way we've dealt with that in the past, we did it in the last EIR, was we acknowledged there were all these other projects out there. Each one of those projects did what we call a site-specific master plan. It took existing data, said, here's what you proposed, here's what you're doing, here's your impact. That's the way we address that. All of those projects, if they're now approved in a record, they will be in the land use. If Marion Mountain comes back in 9 months, sorry, we're gonna do a separate project-specific master plan. You can't roll it in if it's not an approved land use.
Now, is that our requirement regulation, or is that mandated from state, water, county, someplace else?
Last time we did that, we were sued by the property out behind Palomar College. We did talk about that last time. They did approach us, and they sued the district, 8 counts, 7 or 8 different items that they sued us on. You used the wrong projected land use, you did this, you were growth inducing because you used a land use that was not approved. It all got thrown out of court. There was summary judgment. But there was another case, it's up above Sacramento, I can't remember what the little city was, but it was a water agency, probably 10 years ago. They did that. They used other land use. They sued and lost. You can't use an unapproved land use.
So let me understand that. We're gonna do this snapshot.
Mhm.
We're going to identify whoever else is out there, and if they show up later, they will do an individual master plan to add to our master plan, if you will.
I wouldn't say it adds to it, it's called a supplemental master plan.
Supplement.
That's what we've done the last 5
But,
years.
but it would include them then.
Yes.
I guess the question was, will that spread, will that change the spread?
That's a whole different issue.
Oh, it is?
That's a whole different animal for the district and the board to deal with, which is capital facility fees. That's a totally different animal.
But I thought I saw it on the
Oh, it says
document.
we use these facilities to determine fees.
Yeah.
How the board chooses to appropriate those fees in the future, that's a separate document. We haven't even started.
That won't be part of this
You're
at
not
all?
gonna get to that for a year, year and a half.
Okay, that's separate.
Yeah, totally separate animal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there another calendar besides this one?
Not for the master plan.
Before
No,
I
this
start
is, this
asking
is the
my
calendar.
Okay, so tell me the next step for the board. We notice to proceed is gonna happen this evening, potentially. So April 2nd, it starts, the awarding of the contract.
Mhm.
They start working feverishly at Black and Veatch.
Mhm.
You sit back. Then you're gonna be compiling the 2014 master plan duty factors. You're gonna complete the water resource analysis, and then it comes back to the board? When does it come back to the board next time? What's been done?
Have James come up.
Actually, Rob had it in his presentation.
This is a board calendar in my mind, and I realize
So-
it's not set in stone.
Rob, go back to where you just outlined the 3 workshops, if you don't mind. Okay, so it's land use and duty factors, the first one. So that one will be, whoops, went back too far. Will be after they complete the master plan duty factors back in August. So basically, late summer, there'll be a first workshop. The second workshop will be completion of capital facilities improvement, which will be basically end of the year.
Okay, hold on. So late summer's the first one.
And end of the year would be the second, just after December 17th.
Okay. And what's the second one?
The completion of the capital improvement program. And then, basically, you'll have an administrative draft submittal around February of next year, 2015, for the third workshop. And then at that point, the master plan kind of goes and takes a sidestep, and the programmatic EIR process starts, in which there are set-in public hearings and workshops within that for the public, and also to the board during that process.
Okay, so the first 3, late summer through February, are board workshops open to the public, obviously, but there's not a lot of input. Those aren't workshops.
No, they're full workshops.
They're full-blown workshops.
Yes.
Okay.
There'll be, Black and
Okay.
Veatch will be presenting the information, there'll be discussions on it.
And then, okay, what happens after February?
Well, looking at this right here, you basically start on the public review and the actual programmatic EIR process, and that is a completely, so that's the CEQA process. So we're bound by the CEQA process there. They'll start with a notice of preparation will be the first one, which will be a public hearing where the district will come out and say, we are preparing a programmatic EIR, and, you know, this is what's going to be in the document, and please give us comments for us to consider what to put into the programmatic EIR.
What's a rough timeline?
August 2015?
I'd say February, March for the notice.
Oh, for the notice?
For
Okay.
the notice of prep,
Yeah.
yes. And then after that, then basically, most of that year in 2015, the
So
documents.
February and March, there were 2 meetings, 2
Yes.
public?
Yeah. And
All right.
then there'll be a kind of a hiatus, because most of that year, the actual environmental process will be underway. All the subsequent documents and the impacts and all the special studies will be occurring. So really, Rob, why don't you take it over from there? You know the environmental process better than I do.
Yeah, so the next time after that, we'll be back before the board would be to ask permission to commence the 45-day public review process. And so that's most likely November 2015.
November 2015, and that's not a special workshop, that's a regular meeting.
That's a regular meeting, yep.
Okay, November 2015, okay, and assuming things go well,
Assuming things go well there, we'll have all of our workshops in order. We will finalize the program EIR, and we'll be back before the board for adoption of the 24 master plan and program EIR sometime around February 2016.
okay? And how many outside workshops was that? Or how many workshops was that completed?
So we're at three master plan workshops, 2 public hearings for the program EIR, and then
The adoption.
two board approvals, one to initiate the 45-day public review and one for approval of the master plan and program EIR.
So it's probably 5 public workshops.
Public input.
5 public meetings plus 2 extra, I'd say 7
Yeah,
total.
7 meetings total.
Oh, plus 2, I
Yeah.
thought they'd just be at regular meetings,
It will be, but it's actually a hearing, and it's an open public hearing too.
but it's at a regular meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll get you a firm schedule. Like I said, once this is awarded, they're gonna start nailing down some times.
Okay, and at what time, I mean, should it be determined we need more public workshops, is that a possibility?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
If suddenly we have public outcry over
Absolutely.
whatever numbers they come up with?
We had 24 meetings last time total.
24?
Mhm.
Well, we didn't have Black and Beach then, did we? Should only be 7 this time. Good.
Rob, could you modify this and show where those workshops generally could be? So that, and then when we get the copy to the board, we'll have a better idea.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so that being the schedule there, just want to briefly go through what you have in your staff report on the consultant selection process. We sent off requests for proposals to 7 of our local engineering firms there. These are firms there that we know have master planning experience, have background in it, know can do the work very well. We did that back in October 17th of last year. On November 22nd, we received back 4 proposals from 4 different teams, and I say teams because some of the firms teamed up together, so we actually only had 1 firm that wasn't represented from those first 7 that we sent the request to proposals for. We held presentations and interviews on February 6th of this year for all 4 of those engineering teams. Black and Beach was selected as the most qualified. And on March 10th, the scope of work and fee negotiations with Black and Beach concluded successfully. And staff is recommending their approval of the agreement, engineering services agreement with Black and Beach in the amount of $713,082. Yes, sir.
Is this, and maybe I should ask someone from Black and Beach, but is this all Black and Beach does? I don't know.
No, Black and Beach does quite a few things there. Black and Beach does planning, they also do in design, construction management services. Yeah, they do the basically what we call the gamut there in the engineering field.
I know I hear them wherever I go, and I see the booths wherever I go as well, so I mean, I know they're very, but I didn't know if this is all they do, this is what they specialize in.
They're predominantly a water and wastewater they're a very large company, very strong experience in water and wastewater facilities. In the past, we've had other engineering firms that come in and want to, we can do a master plan. How hard can it be? They can't even make it through the interview process. So they're very well qualified for it. Mr. Strayer, if you'd like to ask him any questions, be happy to answer if you come up. Maybe you can tell a little bit more about what your company does, size.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity to speak, Director Martin.
Thank you.
Directors. Yeah, Black and Veatch, as far as, size of firm, is one of the largest engineering firms in the world. We're a top 10 E&R firm in water and wastewater. We are the #1 firm in telecom as well for AT&T and things like that. We do a lot of wireless work. And we're also in the top 10 on energy. I think we're #2 right now in the world on energy. We are a local San Marcos business, so despite being this big engineering firm, our office is right here in San Marcos. My experience spans with the last master plan, Vallecitos. I'm very familiar with San Marcos. My first job after high school was actually in San Marcos. Went to school over the hill. And our local team, which we brought with us, is a planning-centric team. We have different groups that do different things. In the water, wastewater space, we do design, construction of major facilities, as Dennis and Robert pointed out. Our planning team is the team that will be working your job, so we're not putting design engineers on a planning job. We have a planning-specific team focused on this job that are familiar with reuse, both locally and in the area. We manage the master plan for the County Water Authority. So we have that regional perspective on the Water Authority. We've also managed indirect local reuse projects for the City of San Diego and City of Escondido. That's more of a recycled water business plan question, which is, I know, your next agenda item. But we have led some of the biggest, most comprehensive reuse programs in Southern California, including the Orange County project as well, that you might be versed in. So if there's any other questions, I'm certainly happy to answer it. We have a good crew here. We're very involved in the community. I personally am on the board for the Boys and Girls Club since 2005 for Carlsbad.
Hey, Carlsbad's good too, but I'm really glad to hear.
Yeah, I know you're involved with San Marcos, so I just have.
What the heck's the matter?
I'm really glad to hear you're a San Marcos business. How large is the office in San Marcos?
We just expanded the office space. It's on Rancheros Drive. It's right by City Hall. I say there's probably, we're up to now about 25 people in that office, fairly good size for an engineering firm. Almost all the people in this office are water, wastewater professionals. We also have another office in San Diego that has, the majority of them are telecom with some water in there as well. It just varies between the offices. We have other offices in California as well.
Great. Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Hernandez?
Rob, the other firms that were, that made the short list, if you will,
Yes, sir.
who are they?
The other proposals that we received a proposal from Infrastructure Engineering Corporation. We received obviously from Black and Beach, we received a combined proposal from Kennedy Jenks and HDR Engineering. And finally, we received a combined proposal from DUDEC and RMC.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there's probably a slide coming up. The amount we paid last time for the master plan? Do you have any idea what the contract was last time?
I don't have that number offhand, no, but I believe it was approximately $750,000.
Oh, we'll get a discount because they moved to San Marcos.
Less traveling time.
That's what I was going to say, let's try it. Well, terrific.
It's very comparable on cost,
Yeah.
and we're actually getting more in this one than we did last time because we're rolling, well, I say we're getting more, meaning because we're taking the urban water management plan, which was done in 2008, the IRP, rather, excuse me, IRP, Integrated Water Resource Plan. We rolled that into the document this time, so now you have that, the master plan, and the urban water management plan all going in 5-year cycles together. Before they were kind of staggered 2 or 3 years. So because we're including it, we're actually getting a more cost-effective document.
And this contract is a not higher than contract?
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed.
Unless we change our scope.
That's correct.
Would our scope be if there were more public meetings needed? Is that a scope?
It would depend. There are quite a few public meetings that we did have in the scope just in case. If the board wanted another one, it would just be a choice of whether or not we felt we needed the consultant to be here. If it's just staff, then obviously there's no additional expense.
Any other questions from the board? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Great
sir.
presentation.
Thank you, Rob. And the recommendation that staff has, if there's no other questions, would be to award the contract to Black and Beach in the amount of, can I get my glasses on or make it bigger? $713,082.
Need a motion?
That was,
What?
before the motion, just a question. Tom, we've got this money in our hip pocket, and we don't have to go.
Yeah, we budgeted
where-
$750.
I'm sorry, is that number 2 you pointed out?
Yeah,
Yeah, adequate funds are available.
thank you.
Motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Roll call, please.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes?
Director Poe?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Thank you, Rob. The next one, and I'll give a little lead in on this to, again, just because of some historical background so the board can see where we're at. This does start on page 21. Then Rob's got a 73-item PowerPoint presentation to go over on that one as well. And again, the staff memo's there to give you history, but I'll just elaborate on that a little bit just to keep you from having to read it again. The district back in the early 90s, I should say actually 1981, when he entered into the recycled water business. That's when the board took action to reactivate Meadowlark, which was basically turned off in 1968. That's when the treatment plant was shut down. We used to go to what they call, land applied disposal, I guess would be the best way. We ran it through the treatment process, took the big pieces out, and sprayed the rest on the ground. That's how it was disposed of. We joined Encina in 1968 through the land outfall. The board chose to reactivate the plant in the late 70s. That was due to basically a moratorium on sewer capacity. That's when Dayon Corporation started to build the La Costa area. We entered into an agreement that they would actually fund the expansion of the treatment plant, build the fail-safe line, which is the reclaimed line that takes the water to the coast through Encina, and build Mar Reservoir. I think most of you have seen that on the tours. In exchange for them funding that, the district provided them with, I think it was 400 to 600 equivalent dwelling units of sewer capacity. So in other words, they funded it, we gave them the capacity afterwards. The plant was built to handle initial capacity of 600,000 gallons a day. That was sizing of the plant. The board expanded that plant in, several times. We went to 600,000 to 2 million. We re-rated to 2.5 million. We were selling water to La Costa Golf Course directly through the Carlsbad Water District beginning in 1991. So that was our first reclaimed water customer. So basically the board decided to expand the plant. We didn't have any customers yet, but we were selling to full production by 91. In 97-ish, the board entered into an agreement with Carlsbad to where we have a 25-ish year contract with Carlsbad Water District for 3 million gallons a day of recycled water. And in, I think it was 2005, we entered into an agreement with the Liebenhain for 1.5 million gallons per day of recycled water. So right now, the full production of what we can make is committed to the two independent agencies. We act as wholesale, they act as the retail. So your water's going to, what's the school, La Costa Meadows area, Carrillo area, the flower fields, Legoland, Aviara, all of those areas, those are all reclaimed water provided by us. In the 1997 master plan, there was an option, it was called option 5. The district looked at building a regional wastewater treatment plant right out there in the middle of the field where the baseball fields are. We were going to build a 25 MGD Title 22, which is reclaimed water treatment plant. The concept was to sell our capacity in Encina. That funding would actually pay for us building this treatment plant. The district proposed to go what they call live stream discharge through what they call site-specific objectives to the regional board. We would bring all the sewer in here, treat it, distribute wherever it needed to be distributed, within reason. It was basically the heart of the city area. Speaking of the heart of the city, that was the alternate location for the sewer treatment plant. As you can imagine, that wasn't well received. And then the final effluent that we didn't need to sell, or we couldn't sell, we would dump in at City Hall, right there at Valparaiso Bridge, the old Valparaiso crossing. That would give a live stream discharge into Lake San Marcos and San Marcos Creek to help clean it up. As we went through that process, what they called option 5, what it came down to was the board made the decision not to pursue that. So basically, from the 91 era, the board has acted as a wholesale agency, and that's the way all planning documents have been. In the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan that we talked about that we adopted in 2008, it had things like desal, Olean Water District, reclaim water if it becomes practical from Escondido, because they're building at Harf, Hill Avenue Recovery Facility. If we had it available, we would buy it. So we continue to look at recycled water every master plan, but at a standpoint of buying that water. So basically, since 1991, the district has chosen to act as a wholesale agency. Every master plan update that we've done included recycled water, but only as a peripheral discussion to see if it was available. If it was reasonably available, buy it, and we become a retail agency. So that's how we've kind of gotten here, to the fact that we don't act as a retail agency. Back in March, April, May of last year, we brought this conversation up with the board. We provided some basic costs, basic things to implement and look at a specific business plan for recycled water. Because what's in the master plan is a holistic approach. So as Rob will walk through this, he's going, and I've kind of just gone to that front to explain what it was, just from more of a standpoint. I've got the history a little better than Rob. And so what we did was, as we went through the master plan process, because the board wanted to look and see what the cost is to do it, what are we going to get out of it, and what are we going to look at. So we asked the consultants to give us a separate scope that we could bring before the board, and then the board can talk about, okay, yes, we want to look at this, yes, we want to look at that, the cost is reasonable, the cost is not reasonable, plus Rob will explain how, if we move forward, it will be brought back to the board one more time for the board to make decisions on yes or no. If the answer is yes, it just gets rolled into the master plan. If the answer is no, well, you have a document that you've planned for the future, and what I'm going to guess is in 5 years, we'll probably update it again. So that's kind of the history, how we got here, and the fact that we're not a retail agency, we're wholesale, and then I'll turn it over to Rob to finish it up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lamb. Okay, so I have before you here one more presentation, shorter this time here, and this is for the board discussion and consideration for the completion of a recycled water business plan. Remember that slide I was talking about at the very beginning of the last presentation on the strategic plan objectives here? Same exact slide. This time we are focusing on Area 6, which is the resource exploration, and very specifically on Strategy 6.2 when it comes to reclaimed water. Dennis went over a lot of the history here on this here. The difference here that we might see is doing the recycled water business plan concurrently with the master plan could offer an opportunity here for an economy of scale, especially if we have some grant funding is available, which I'll get to here in a few slides. So the goals and objectives here of the business plan, we want to identify all the recycled water opportunities that we believe are out there, anything that's potable, non-potable, at the wholesale level, at the retail level. We want to kind of find everything that could be out there, and then we want to assess these and then start screening these down to those few that we believe are going to be palatable, that could be potential options for us in the future. Theoretically here, we're talking about 3 selected options. And for each of these options, the business plan will then look at the recycled water demands in our service area, look at the projected capital cost of the infrastructure that's needed to make it work, a recycled water per acre foot cost, and of course the timing of implementing these. Some we can implement sooner than others. For instance, if we're talking direct potable reuse, that's going to have to come much later just because of legislation. And these are some examples here of some of the options there that might be out there. We could be talking wholesale expansion as per what's now called the North San Diego Water Reuse Coalition. We can be talking about all kinds of non-potable reuse options, indirect and direct potable reuse. We can be talking groundwater opportunities that may or may not be out there. And we can be talking about surface water storage and augmentation. Big theme is board workshops tonight here, and we have some more for you. Our first workshop on this recycled water business plan would be to review the approach that we'd want to take and discuss all these potential recycled water options that may or may not be out there. And on the second workshop, we would review our analysis of these and our results of our screening and come forward with our recommendations on these are the ones that we would probably want to study in a little bit more detail.
Rob, I believe last year we spoke, workshop one, review the approach and discuss water. I think we briefly discussed it in a workshop.
We did, but if you recall, we had 3 slides with about 10 bullet items. I said we could do indirect potable reuse, we could do IPR, that is the same thing, direct potable reuse, excuse me, recycled water. Why don't you go back one slide if you would, please, Bob? If you look in the middle, it shows non-potable. This is kind of what I was talking about, was where could we actually do recycled water without having to build a new treatment plant? Because if you do recycled water, it has to come from a treatment plant. If you build a treatment plant, you have to get rid of solids, you got all those issues associated with sewer. If you build recycled water, you have to have storage. Storage can be South Lake. Storage could be the Twin Oaks Basin. Those components are actually in that North County Reuse Coalition piece. So we've kind of talked about them all, and where the board's concern was, back when we did this last year, we were throwing out global numbers. We thought it might be $40 million worth of capital. We don't know what the demand is, because when we did our last business plan that had demands, that was back in 1991. It's a different world, so it's really of no value. So again, we know there's probably some reasonable ones, and in the last 6 months, you've been hearing nothing at your conferences besides IPR and DPR. They're coming, but everybody's got to be practical about this. It's going to be 3 to 5 years before we have the stuff in place to determine what we do. So this is not going to happen next year. As Rob's indicating, that's going to probably be a decade out. We talked about groundwater opportunities. Is the North County project looking at Twin Oaks Basin? The EIR that we've already approved and we're part of in this group, they're already looking at whether or not this Twin Oaks Basin can be used by all of us. So we're already looking at that. Storage, I think South Lake was also one of the alternatives that was being looked at on how we could use storage for South Lake. The trick with South Lake is because we have an agreement with the city on use of that reservoir, we have an elevation limit. We can't take it lower than a certain elevation. It's pretty tough to build a recreational facility for boats and docks when the water's doing this. So we have storage component issues with South Lake we have to deal with. But anyway, those are already being looked at. That's why we say that this study would be done in conjunction with the existing North San Diego water reuse. But the board's concern back then was, did you want to spend $350,000 or $250,000, whatever it would be, to do a study that says, ouch, that's a lot of money. So what we did was we pulled back and just delayed it, basically. Because you're doing a master plan, you've got all the same data, and you don't have to collect it independently. So that's why you'll see the cost here is substantially less. Plus the fact that there's grant funds that the engineer made us aware of that we can get towards the cost. So we did talk about it, but in a very global fashion.
Okay, so are we going to be asked in the very near future from this North County project to do the same thing?
They're already doing it, but in a different fashion. They're doing it at a very high level, and that's what the master plan normally does. What you're talking about here is getting into the nuts and bolts document, into the detail. Here's your demands, here's the pipes, here's the tanks, here's the treatment.
Or, yeah, but And my question is, wasn't part of the North County plan?
No.
To reduce all of our expenses by doing this as a group and to make it more feasible?
No, the purpose of the North County plan was to make sure that the 9 agencies, or however many there are right now, that we're not going 9 different directions. What the purpose of the whole North County project was, okay, if Escondido is going to expand the treatment plant, but we need some demands in our southeast corner, east side of our district, we'll talk to them and just buy the recycled water from them. Don't go building something that's parallel. And if somebody's going to build a pipe, let's say VID is going to build a pipe from Vista, it's going to head to Oceanside. Well, if Carlsbad can use it beneficially, size that pipe accordingly. So that's what the whole North County project is. Make sure we don't all go 7 different directions and build 7 different things. If you're going to build something, talk to your partners. But again, that's a very global thing. That's at the 50,000-foot look. What this is doing is now getting into the nuts and bolts. And what we'll say is, okay, there's a pipe going to come from Escondido to Vista. We don't need to build a pipe. When it happens, we can take water from it and we can serve it here.
Well, when do we expect the North County plan to get to the 1,000-foot level?
It won't. It's only going to be a very global, very high-level document.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so workshop 1 there, we'll evaluate all the ideas, alternatives, however you want to call it. Workshop number 2, we'll get into the analysis of those. We'll give the results of our screening and make a recommendation on what final options to carry forward for more detailed analysis. And in the final workshop here, workshop 3, we'll present the findings here of this very detailed analysis there in the final draft business plan and ask for board direction. I briefly mentioned the grant funding proposal at the beginning of this presentation. Black and Beach has identified a $75,000 match funding available through the State Water Resources Control Board that can be used for this on a 1-to-1 match basis.
Is that missing the word potential or possible in front of available? Or do we know it's there?
We know it's there. It's
Guarantee?
something that we have to apply for. I don't know about the guarantees on that there. Maybe Scott, you can speak on that a little bit more.
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott Lynch. I actually talked to the guy at the board who administers the grants. This funding's been available for several years, and they still have funding available. It's really just a matter of making the application, getting it approved, and that's about a 2 to 3 month process for them to review that. They send you a draft approval letter, you sign it, and 2 weeks later you get a notice to proceed. So it's one of the easiest grant applications that the state has.
You're pretty
Probably the
com-
easiest.
You're pretty comfortable with it?
Yes, I've done several of them, so they're pretty easy to obtain.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
are there any other grant opportunities out there? Well, I was trying to catch him before he set back.
Not at the planning study at the moment, and there are through the, I think you're familiar with the IRWM process, which the North San Diego has funding for right now as part of theirs. Those processes, or those monies from the proposition, they're coming, but they usually are gonna take 1 year to 2 years to come through, so they really wouldn't match your time frame. And for a master plan, they usually like more of the shovel-ready stuff or the pre-design work that leads to a design. So from a master plan, this is, without getting into lobbying and things like that, this is probably the easiest, best mechanism and the fastest, especially that meets your desired time frame.
Dennis, is that the discussion that we've been going through relative to the earmarks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've actually, through the North County group, through the process of getting Prop 84 money, and we just got another big chunk and got them to reinstate the full funding. They only wanted to give San Diego half. The Water Authority staff was real good about getting the full amount, but we've received 1.8 million, give or take, so far. But that's the pump station improvements we're doing down at #1 lift station. Like Scott said, they want something hard.
Yeah.
To do it. Planning studies.
Yeah. No, that's what we learned when we went up there relative to, they do want your skin in the game on a real
The Prop
physical
80, Prop
product.
84 money, which is what we go after, they usually want something pretty firm.
Okay. Thank you.
So the application preparation work involved with this grant funding here, that is included in Black and Beach's scope of work. To obtain the grant funding proposal, the grant funding, does require a resolution of the board authorizing the general manager to execute the grant contract on the board's behalf, and that's why you see the resolution there in the board packet. And as far as the scheduling here on the recycled water business plan, this time here, I do have some dates there for these proposed workshops.
Quick move.
He did those while you were.
I figured
Yeah,
that,
blinked.
yeah.
Right. So as Scott mentioned here, it does take approximately 3 months here to obtain the grant commitment there. So that's why we have a July 2014 date for there. And then going through the workshops here, proposal to start the first workshop there on presenting all the alternatives and options in December of this year, reviewing those and doing the screening in February of next year, and then hope to have a final draft of the business plan there by May, and a final report by June.
That's a good calendar, by the way.
Oh, okay. I'll keep that in mind there.
We'll complicate that a little bit for you. If I might, Director Evans, before you start, I want to go back to the first workshop. I know Director Hernandez has a lot of interest in this. That first workshop is not us just saying this is what we're going to do. This is going to be the board saying, what do you want us to look at? If you want us to look at IPR, DPR, recycled water, groundwater. So this will be the board's chance to basically say, okay, this is where we want to move forward with. Or if, as a consensus, it's like, let's not. But even if we're not sure, the second item, workshop number 2, that's where you're going to get your first good cut at what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. That doesn't mean you're going to approve it. It just means we'd like to knock it down to 3 things that we'll hone in on. Then it comes back on that third workshop. That's the board's choice at that point, yes or no. If the board says, yes, we want to include this, even at a planning level, that's when we roll it into the master plan. So we have that all scheduled and planned into the schedule of the master plan document, so we can do all this.
So then towards that end, workshop 2 with the draft analysis will not only give us the items, but will give us some costs relative to what those items are and timeframes as to if we decide to implement it, when they would actually be started and completed.
I'd imagine these would be very high-level estimates and scopes, but yeah, we'll have something to that effect.
There's going to be things that are glaringly no.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's others that are,
Yeah,
okay.
It's an engineer's estimate as to, without any plans or
Yeah.
specifications, what it is and where it's gonna be. Okay, all right?
So at what point have we committed to the $175,000?
Well,
Or the 100,000 if we get the grant?
Why don't you go to the next slide? Next slide.
Okay.
Okay, what were the options that we kind of built into this? We do allow, I think they said it was 90 days, up to 90 days. I think it's fairly firm that we can get the money, but it's no guarantee. So if the board did want to consider this, what we had asked tonight, if you want to do a conditional upon getting the 75,000, if the board wants to do this conditionally as an approval, if you want to move forward, there's 3 things we'd like from you tonight. One is to authorize the budget amendment. We don't have the money for this. And what I would say is authorize the award of the contract to Black and Veatch in 158,630 contingent upon getting the $75,000 matching funds. And so if something happens in the next 90 days, we don't get it, and we don't get the funds, there's no contract. I think that would be acceptable, Black and Veatch. There is a delay built into the contract that this works in the schedule, it's that 90 days. And also, if that is the action on behalf of the board, then we'd ask you to adopt the resolution, because I need the resolution as soon as possible to apply for the money.
And the difference between the 185 and 158,
Staff time versus Black and Veatch time.
that's our staff time.
Correct.
That's including our staff time, yes.
Our staff time is in the budget.
Yes.
It's just Black and Veatch for 158 is not in the budget.
No, I'm sorry, the budget amendment is 185.
Okay, but isn't our staff time?
It's not allocated to this project.
It's not allocated to this project. We would just
Allocated
allocate.
to pay somebody.
Yeah, it's allocated, but because it's a capital expenditure, any money that we put out towards a capital project gets allocated towards capital. That's how we budget every project we
Okay,
have.
but we're not hiring somebody.
No,
to
no,
do
no, no.
this.
No, it's
No.
it's just
So
a matter of
that-
like.
That's just a.
It's
that's
just where we move the money
It's just a
around.
bean thing.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
bean
just a
counter.
matter of where my time gets
Bean
charged,
counter,
basically.
yeah.
So it's actually 158,000 minus 75
Is what the cost would be.
is what the true cost would be.
That's
Would that be right?
Marginal.
True.
Marginal cost.
Marginal cost. Thank you. As long as it's not escaping.
Yeah. That'd be fugitive.
Yeah, no fusion. Okay. Mr. Hernandez.
Yes, you mentioned, Rob and Dennis, relative to that first workshop being the items that we were going to look at, but I wanted to ensure that the scope of the contract included a couple of these items here. The study of the expansion of Meadowlark, the raising of the dam at South Lake, additional storage anywhere we could, and how this, I think you said how this connects with North County and that whole group, the groundwater, the
Twin Oaks Basin.
checking the groundwater specifically. I mean, I read our report cover to cover, passed out 3 times reading it. But it's an interesting report, but I've got more questions than got answers. But nonetheless, the
But if-
groundwater,
Yeah, you got to remember that goes back, that was considering conjunctive use of potable water.
yes.
So it's a different
Yeah.
report.
And then recharging the groundwater, that would be part of the scope. The one thing that Manager Lamb mentioned is in your scope, the studying of this agreement with the city on South Lake?
That would be a policy issue of the board to deal with.
Okay, well, we're gonna add that in, so we got information, so that the board can make those discussions. And okay, if it includes all that, that's what I wanted to know.
Let's-
I would just like to clarify that at workshop number 1, we are going to discuss all possible approaches, even if we come up with something that he didn't mention.
Yep.
Right? That's the whole point of workshop 1. Okay, so can we move? Are you, oh, you have a question?
Director Poto?
Yeah, I would assume all those things would be part of what we just talked about.
Pretty
anyways.
comprehensive.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of those past boards that made those brilliant decisions, which was to resurrect Meadowlark, join Encina, and not put waste treatment right in the middle of San Marcos. So they did a great job, and I'm assuming they did that because they had really good information. So there was, to me, there would be no reason not to go forward with this project because we can't make good decisions without good information. But I did have a question, and that is, right now at the Meadowlark, where all the recycled water we have we're using, is that correct?
Yes,
So the only thing that we don't really use here goes down to Encina,
correct.
is that right? It doesn't use at Meadowlark, goes down to Encina,
Yes.
and then it's recycled down there.
It's disposed to the ocean.
It could be one of both,
It depends on what happens down there,
Right.
yeah.
right? Okay. So anyway, I would
It's a pretty big issue, and this is going to give the board the opportunity. You may not actually enact anything right now,
Right.
to be perfectly honest, because of where the rules and everything else are. But the outcome of this study is going to direct the next 15, 20, 30 years
You bet.
of the district. So it is a fairly important piece. Pretty good price, actually.
Are you done with the presentation?
I believe I am done with the presentation, yes, sir.
Okay, remember, the public wants to speak, and they will speak more. So, Mr. Michael Hunsaker.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, see, I think I asked for 2.1.
I should wear my glasses, sorry. Do you want to speak now?
Yeah.
You can cover both of them, if you like.
Mr. Lamb was talking about the mobile home parks, the difference between a private facility and a public ownership of the lines going to each home.
I'm sorry, that's not what you're talking about here.
Right,
This is
well, it
item
is.
2.1, 2.2 only.
Right, But what I want to do is point out that there is a separate category needed in this plan for mobile home parks. I'm looking at specifically San Marcos View Estates. They have a master water meter, which is adequate to the present standards for 50 EDUs. They have 192 mobile home parks being serviced by this one valve. The mobile home parks are actually some of the most environmentally friendly and least consuming water and electric districts you can get. And we may not, in the upgrades of our conversion lines, be allowed to maintain private service. That's one of the issues. If we aren't, then we should have a water usage and connection fees, capacity fees, which represent actual usage factors. For this park at least, and for most others, the difference is huge. Between 50 and 192, and connection fees can be prohibitive. So I'm asking that in this master plan that we have a category for mobile home parks. And there is also a disconnect. We do have a rate for sewer for a mobile home park, which is about 235 gallons per day. Well, if we're not using more than about 70 gallons per day, that's a big difference. And I think this should be addressed in the master plan. And I also would like to know if there's going to be any reserve for droughts in this plan, or an analysis of the risk for Colorado River water being less available. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your opinion, Mr. Fonseca. All right, we'll continue on.
Before we go,
We're on 2.2. We're not on 2.1.
Well, however, he
We're on
was supposed to
2.2.
speak on 2.1, so I think we missed over it, so I'd like to ensure that that takes place, because I think if it's not already there, and I think something.
It's already there.
Something's there?
Yeah,
Okay.
the PUC cannot come in and make a determination that tells us we have to take a public water supply inside of a mobile home park.
No.
They have a 6-inch meter that is more than adequate to serve the entire park. It currently provides that. In the current fee ordinance, there is a category already for mobile home.
Okay.
In that covers the capacity plus the monthly service charge already.
All right. No,
My apologies, but we're back to 2.2.
yes.
Go ahead with more questions.
Well, I would recommend staff approval and make a motion to that effect.
Can you back up to the 3 recommendations, please? We do have 3 actions.
Yes.
I don't know
Would
if the
you put
board
them back
wanted
up?
to make the motion approving the full amount contingent upon the 75,000?
Yes, and if you want me to state it that way.
Option number 1?
Nope,
Hold on, let me see, yeah.
I'm sorry, I was just wondering if I could offer something here on the contract there.
Yeah.
We still need a certain amount of funds there for Black and Beach to work on the grant application there. So could we maybe have authorize the contract there, and if the grant funding is not available or we don't get it, we can always cancel the contract too. That's another alternative.
Yeah.
So what did you just explain to us? I'm sorry.
Well, I think what you're asking for is something that we have to pay them to do the draft for the grant. And
Yes, sir.
and if we don't get the grant, then that's money lost.
Right.
But we can't ask for the grant and not pay for the application process.
We're talking a few $1,000s. I'll take
How
care,
much?
we're taking a few $1,000s. I'll take care of that through general
Oh,
engineering.
okay.
I'm not
All
worried
right.
about that.
Yes.
So if the recommendation, I would ask that the budget be amended, $185,000. The second item would be approval of the agreement with Black and Beach in the amount of $158,630, contingent upon receiving the $75,000 grant. And the third item would be a roll call vote approving the resolution for the application for the matching funds.
And do you want to do those separately or all in one?
I think you can do that all in one.
All
Make
in
the
one.
motion, then she can do a roll call vote.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Question, staff. Before we spend this $75,000, is this, what's staff's feeling? I notice there's no opinion. There's no recommendation, there's no Are we chasing butterflies here, or is there some reality, or we really don't know?
You want to take that, Rob?
What's
No,
your learning,
what-
what's
what-
your learning all that?
Yeah, you know, I think there's two reasons, there's two purposes here, and again, I've got to go back a little bit in time. When we were trying to approve the 2007 master plan,
2008 master plan.
2008? Maybe it was I can't remember the numbers.
Oh, wait.
We could never get the master plan adopted because we kept, the board and all these alternatives kept coming, well, what about recycled water? What about desal water? What about buying water from the Escondido VID joint filtration plant? So that's when we did the first IRP. We said those resource issues are a separate document. So that's what led to the desal, the board's decision to enter into desal. That's what led into the board's decision to work with Liebenhain to buy capacity from Liebenhain through their facilities. Included in that document was look at reclaimed water and then look at other stuff as it rolls forward. I think we need to do this from a planning standpoint, but my opinion, Director Martin, or what you're asking for is, I think getting fully into the recycled water business, I don't think it's going to pencil out. Gut feeling. Namely because the fact that decisions were made 20 years ago. Now, if we were an agency that only had Meadowlark and we didn't have all the capacity in Encina, it might be a different story. Because you have to remember, we move forward with Phase 5 in Encina, buying and building all of our extra capacity based upon the board's decision, we wouldn't be a reclaim agency. If you reverse that, now you're talking about a treatment plant somewhere around here. I think what the study is going to show is we need to keep an eye on IPR, we need to keep an eye on DPR, we need to look at conjunctive use of the groundwater as a storage ability, and we need to look at purchasing recycled water from adjacent agencies that can sell it to us when it's reasonably available, plus where can we use it. I think that's what's going to come out of the document. Some of it's not going to be anything we can implement in the next 5 years, 10 years, it might be 15 years. But if the board doesn't look at it now and say, think about it, you're going to be sitting there in 10 years, and now what? So we need to be ahead of the curve. We've always been ahead of the curve on planning. I think what it's going to say is we need to look at it. Gut feeling is the cost to get into the recycled water business at a retail level is probably going to be prohibitive. But let the study tell you that. I think from a planning standpoint and the board's responsibility to plan for the future, great document. And the reason we're not recommending anything, we don't know what all options you want us to look at yet.
Right.
That's why there's no recommendation.
Interesting. Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mississippi Resolution 445. Director Evans?
Yes, and I would like to thank you for two very lovely, well done presentations.
No, my pleasure, thank you.
To you and
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Polo?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much.
Are you staying up for the next one too, or is that James?
I'll let James take that.
Okay.
James, 2.3, construction for Meadowlark tanks 1 and 2 refurbishment.
Thank you, President Martin, members of the board. I know you've been up here seeing two presentations. I just have a quick staff recommendation, so I'll be quick. The district does regular maintenance, part of the state regulations, to dive our tanks, make sure they're in good conditions. And during the dive of a couple of our tanks, the Meadowlark tanks, it was noticed that they had corrosion inside. So when we see those things coming from the operations department, we schedule maintenance and repairs. So these are ongoing maintenance, and you'll see different tank jobs come up periodically as we go in to recoat them, replace steel that's been corroded, and also update to the current OSHA, the current safety regulations. Since we're taking the tank down, that's a perfect opportunity to do that. So this project is the Meadowlark tanks 1 and 2. It's scheduled for repair this fiscal year. The district sent out on March 13th. The district sent out bids, went out for bids in March and received bids on March 13th. And you can see the bidders listed with Pacific Titan being the lowest, most responsive and responsible bidder. Both staff and council reviewed the bids, and with the total estimated budget, we realized there was a small shortfall, around $17,000. So with that, staff recommends increase the budget by $17,700 to accommodate the full scope, both the construction management we've done in-house, Harpen Associates is one of our as-needed consultants. They'll be doing the special coating inspection and any welding inspection. And obviously, district staff will be doing all the regular inspections and the management of the job. And of course, award the job to Pacific Titan for $467,581. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Question, Director Hensler.
How did we find out that we had the corrosion?
Well, again, the operations department schedules routine maintenance. I believe, is it a state or a county requirement to inspect their tanks? It's a state requirement to inspect their tanks. I believe they're dove every 2 years? Every 3 years, sorry, every 3 years. And when they're diving, there's a video. We review the video, we review the recommendations in the report along with the video. And in this case, it was shown that there was corrosion, especially above the water line. There's some corrosion on the floor and on the side walls of the tank. At that point, we make a determination whether it's critical or something we could push off based on the life expectancy of that coating system, and we schedule the repair.
So it's a dive team or individual goes in there and videos the whole tank, huh?
Yes.
And this is planned? When was the last time?
It's on a rotational cycle, so we dive every tank, every smaller steel tank every 2 years. Sorry, every 3 years.
Every 3 years?
Every 3 years.
And is it the same company that does the work, that does the inspections?
No. We hire Dive Corps to do the inspections. And then from there on, we competitively bid out the actual work to actually do the repairs.
Director Fodor?
This project's been before us a couple times, hasn't it?
Actually, it's the same name. So Metal Arc, we have 2 tanks at Metal Arc. The project that was before the board before, about a year ago, was Metal Arc Tank number 2, which is the larger of the 2 tanks.
Okay.
That's the one where we got into it based on the inspection report. It looked like we needed to do some repairs.
Yeah.
We were going to coat the interior and exterior, and we had to replace some rafters. When we started blasting or removing the existing coating, the rafters started disintegrating.
Right.
So we ended up basically putting on a new support structure for the entire roof, and we cut the exterior coating out to not affect the budget and re-budgeted for this fiscal year. So that's why you see that name in there.
Okay.
There's a lot of things named Metal Arc in the district.
Again, the reason for the rafters disintegrating?
Basically, the corrosion, in different eras of time, there's different coating technologies that were popular. They used to use like a coal tar in the bottom. Different rules came up with what you can put in tanks, and the coating companies changed. So for a while, the coating system that was used above the water line, it was good below the water line, or fairly good below the water line, but above the water line where it's what we call the vapor layer, where you have heat and humidity and it's always a wet condition, but exposed to air, that type of coating system did not hold up. So we're finding that in tanks that were coated, in the 80s, early 80s, late 70s, typically, that coating system didn't hold up. The new coating systems, they specifically make for that area. So we put a different coating now on what we call above the water line compared to below the water line, and then sometimes even a different coating on the floor. So we have different coatings for different areas of the tank now. We've gotten smarter. I'm sure in 20 years we'll figure out that we did something else wrong and have to change it again. So.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of staff to increase by $17,700 to the approved budget and award the construction contract to Pacific Titan Incorporated in the amount of $467,581.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Fodor?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James. All right, moving on to reports. General manager report.
Just a couple quick things. We did pass out a copy of the article that came out on the transparency certificate. They did go out. I've already mentioned the Capio Award that the district is up for on the same thing. Tom will be reaching out to you probably through Diane here in the next week or so to schedule the first budget workshop. So we'll be getting some dates from you that what works best for the budget. So he'll be reaching out to you on that fairly shortly. And then the third item is the May 7th board meeting is the same. It runs concurrent with Aqua. So right now there are 3 board members as well as Tom and I that will be attending, so we will not have a quorum. In the planning of the year with the items that we have that we spread out, we don't have anything scheduled for that meeting. because of that. So we don't need to make a decision today, but at the next board meeting on the 16th, the board will have to decide if we want to move it, not have it, or whatever the case may be. So just a warning to you now, we do need to deal with that at the next board meeting.
Which meeting was that?
The
May
May
7th.
7th. That's the Aqua conference. So we'll deal with that on the 16th, and the board can decide if they want to take action, whatever the case may be. Other than that, I'll hold my comments for closed session.
District Legal Counsel.
An important case for public officials and public agencies came down last week. Maybe you heard about it. The case was the City of San Jose versus Smith. And it involved the extent of the scope of the Public Records Act in relation to the privacy rights of public officials and public employees. It's really the clash of those two really significant public policies. On the one hand, you've got the public's right to know through the Public Records Act and access their local governments. On the other hand, even public officials, have privacy rights under the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. The legal issue is whether the public has the right to access your private phones, emails, and texts that you maintain yourself. And the trial court said yes. And it was a case, I think you may recall, that I've kind of talked about this for a while. And it allowed, the trial court allowed the public to access your private emails and your private texts, if you will, from your cell phones. And so the question was, how far do we want to extend the Public Records Act? And this is something that we've been concerned as public agency attorneys, is that, wait a minute, there reaches a point here, guys, where, in fairness, you got to have individual, Mr. Lamb and the board, you guys have your privacy rights should be protected and honored. And the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal held that the act does not require access to communications between public officials using exclusively private cell phones or email accounts. And the big kicker here is it really was an interpretation of the Public Records Act and what the legislature had established. And the key was that the public agency, in order to be a public record, must prepare, own, use, or retain for the writing to be a public record. So once you get outside this room, if you will, and you get outside, then the question is do we have an obligation to go and retrieve your phones and start to allow the public to inspect your email accounts and your cell phones? And fortunately, I think the court made the correct decision here, and it's basically, for right now, is starting to put the limits on the Public Records Act because it has blown up in the last decade.
Yes.
So you're safe.
The item that you mentioned, owned, so with regard to our iPads here, that's a piece of equipment that the district owns, so if there is communication, I don't use it, but if there's communication between myself and a board member, the staff, then they would have a right to ask for those documents?
Well, I think if it's coming from a private email account, no. I think you've got some good arguments. It does slip a little bit, but the main thing is if it's a server that's maintained here by the district and it goes through a server that's maintained, then that's a different issue. But once you step outside and use your own private stuff, private accounts, then I would argue that it doesn't extend to that. So I think it's a sound decision in the sense that, you think about how far are we going to go with this, folks. I mean, this is getting a little bit where, we have a duty as a public agency to go and inspect, Jim's or Hal's or Betty's, your guys' private email accounts. That's stretching it. And that's where they'd gotten to. And it had gotten to the point where my communications between lawyers representing developers or lawyers doing agreements and things like that ultimately come to you. It was starting to get to the point where we were questioning whether or not we had an obligation under the Public Records Act to produce our drafts and our communications between the lawyers. So, fortunately, I think this case takes care of that, and it's a good one for us. And any other?
Worst case scenario, let's say they had found the other direction.
Yeah.
The worst thing they could do is walk up to you someday and say, let me borrow your phone, I'm gonna download everything, and you're gonna pass it to them, they'll download everything. You got nothing on there, so who cares?
Well, yeah, I mean.
Unless you have private issues on
But
that.
but we're
But you
getting
have
into
a court
your.
looking at it, you don't have.
Well, no,
No,
these would be,
no.
this is the public. This would be anybody from, any member of the public would start to get in there, and you start to get into your emails and your texts and things like that. And really, that's starting to, like the court said, wait a minute, we're starting to invade, we have privacy rights, even public officials,
They can read everything I do, I don't care.
The request that you saw in the UT, that article that just came out 2 weeks ago where they hit all the public agencies. So they wanted my first 20 emails I received March 1st, 2013, and March 1st, 2014, and they wanted the first 20 emails I sent on those same days. Why 20 on that day, I have no idea. I've heard since why, but that's a whole different issue. But they then also asked for my private as well.
If business.
Yeah, but if it was related to business, but it was on my private account. So they were actually asking for my private email.
And what
as
the
well.
court said was, wait a minute, even if
Yeah.
it's a private, okay, even if it's business related, it's a communication between you guys, okay, and it relates to the district. Are we gonna really ask the public agency to go over there and start to retrieve these kinds of emails and things like that you have that are on a private account between you privately? And the court said no, because we don't retain those in the normal course of business. So, and we don't prepare it. So I think it's a good decision in the sense that it's beginning to have some sanity to a very complicated issue.
Great, thank you.
All right, that's all.
Thank you.
A lot of that had to do with staff time too, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that really, and attorney's time. We spent a lot of time answering, like.
PRAs.
Yeah,
That's why I'm surprised the attorney let that happen.
well,
That's all the judge is, an
there was,
attorney.
it was.
An attorney after a few years.
Yeah, no, it
A
was.
judge. No offense. San Diego County Water Authority.
Well, the San Diego County Water Authority, I told you I was gonna go to the Financial Sustainability Task Force meeting, which was a week ago Thursday, and it was very interesting in that the task force had been put together with a wonderful selection of individuals from the whole region, and representing a nice representation both of the agencies in different fields of understanding of the whole thing. They did like 13 meetings getting together, and in the process have been coming forward about quarterly to the board seeking, this is where we're at, are we doing fine? And they thought they were coming to the end of it, and at this final meeting, there was this sudden last minute, I don't like this, you can't do it piecemeal, blah, blah, blah. The typical that happens when there's contention of desire. So it came before the board after that, was the task force meeting, the special meeting, came before the board this last week. And it was interesting, it was ended up taking a roll call vote, and it did have one difference. Originally, we were gonna pass everything, and then we were gonna delay the cost of the D-cell and try to put the final decision on it until 2016, but move forward at this time with what we currently have. And as it ended up, they deferred the final decision on to apply the debt and the equity payments for the Carlsbad D-cell to 2016 rates. And they wanted for the interim between now and then to be sure that those rates applied to supply rate and not the IAC, which is, remind me what that acronym is?
Infrastructure Access Charge.
See, that's where it normally would have been. But to appease the little unhappy ones, it's been thrown in supply, which makes a difference for those of us who would like it to be totally the other way. But it was kind of a minor change of normal policy. And then we're gonna maintain the current policy related to the application of the non-commodity revenue, including the treatment. So it's through 2015, so most of it's really gonna move to 2016. But it was interesting to see the power play was very interesting to, the good thing that came out of it is San Diego City said, we do understand we will need to pay for desal, which has always been an issue. For some of them, they roll off and they want to be, I don't have to pay unless I'm using the water. But we all realize the desal's there for everybody's coming to pay for reliability. Very, very interesting. I think it will move forward just fine and we'll all survive, but it was quite an interesting one. I don't know if you read your news and notes that were in today or yesterday's files that come flying through, but I noticed that the Water Authority's model drought response ordinance has now been adopted for the entire state. So I think that's a compliment to San Diego region. The water bond is up in the air, but you'll be happy to know there's between 10 and 13 being presented at this time. And they're leaning to thinking one will surely go on, but the governor doesn't want any to be on the ballot this year. So very, very interesting. And of course, they go everywhere from one end of them who want it to be all about the Delta and the environment, and then the other side who's saying, well, the problem is there's just no water, so we have to conserve. Very, very interesting there. And my final comment is, we were talking about the workshop, at our last workshop, about considering branding for our district, for the outreach. And they had a presentation by Jason from their company, and you may have seen some of this, their drought campaign theme. It's called Win in Drought, Save Every Way, Every Day. It was very interesting the way they're doing it, and I was just, would like to ask, I don't know if I have to ask, but I'd like to ask your permission that I go down and talk with Jason and perhaps ask Lisa to come with me to gather information on this particular type of branding for the next time we meet. If that's okay? Or ask him to come do a presentation.
That's your prerogative
I'm
to do it.
asking.
You can do that.
Okay,
You
it
can do
just,
that
it
without
was,
us.
it was very impressive. Okay, and finally, this last weekend, although I never made it to the garden, night in the gardens, I did do on my own, I did the Waterwise garden tour for this weekend, and I was so impressed. First, we had our lovely district at Heritage Park, and they did a wonderful job, and they were there.
That's next, that's next.
No, I didn't. What I'm talking
It was
about.
Water Authority, I'm sorry.
Well, it's kind of was, but I'll save it. Then you won't have to listen to me again.
No,
I'll just say it now, it was
it's on the
really
subject.
wonderful, and I was really impressed with it. It kind of tied with Waterwise. That's what I was trying to say, it's Waterwise. It's all about the natives and how truly spectacular the native districts is, the native plants are. Thank you.
Okay, and seeing the wastewater authority, capital improvements,
Our meeting's the 16th.
policy and finance.
Well, we had a board meeting at Encina on the 26th, and we talked about a heavy conversation, board of directors compensation, same thing we do here. And then there was a report on the implementation of the employee wellness program. And speaking of branding, at the PFC meeting, Public and Finance Committee, so this is the time of year we do our budgets. We talk about budgets, but this is the branding for Encina, which is has to do with their Pure Green product. But now it's pure green, pure water, pure energy, and pure knowledge. So they've come out with that kind of a logo. Pretty fascinating on what they do in Encina. They did a real nice presentation on their budget, but I think they did the same.
Yeah, we
one
saw
for
that
grant.
yesterday.
Yeah, so they did a nice job. But anyway, we're doing a budget there so it can be incorporated in the budget here on a timely basis. I think CIC will be doing that shortly. That's all I got.
Okay. Director's reports on travel, conferences, seminars? No? Nothing. There we have it, okay. Other business, meetings, the WF Flood Management Conference is coming up, which I will be attending, if anyone else wishes to attend, please let Diane know. And the CDSA Special District Legislative Days,
Yes.
which will be the first one of those that I actually am going to.
You're driving.
I did, yeah, I did it for the city many times and thought it was a waste of time, so I didn't do it after the second time, so I'll see if this one's worthwhile and not to ever do it again. It was just talking point. Under meetings, oh, there's a director comments, or this goes into meetings. Director comments, okay. I'll wait, I'll bring up on director comments, that way I can't go wrong. Director's comments, directors. Mr. Hernandez.
Yes. I would like at our next board meeting to bring back policy 186 again. And I know we've been massaging it and we're almost there, in my opinion.
And what is that policy, one more time?
That's the delinquency and, there's, I think, another name, delinquency and lockoff, maybe?
Miscellaneous fees.
Yeah, fees like that. Yeah, I would like to bring it back and go through it relative, and the only issue that I have is the late fee date amount. And if we could bring that back and have a discussion on it, because I don't think we can have a discussion on it now because it wasn't on our
Not on
agenda.
the agenda.
So if you'll put that on the next agenda we have, so we can go through that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Director Evans?
I probably do, but I've forgotten.
Oh, nothing. As we probably all saw today, we received accolades in the UT for being the Water District Wins Transparency Award that Joe McKenzie gave us that award at the last meeting we were at. And I would like to thank this board as well as all prior boards that had anything to do with us getting the Transparency Award. My question to staff is, there's a next step, and I thought we were gonna bring back to us who needed to do what next step in order for us to get there.
Yeah, that's very easy to get you the information. There's other steps that we have to do as a district, looking at policies, so we're working through that to let you know what we gotta do.
Okay.
Yeah,
If you
it's
would,
coming.
let us-
Yeah, it'll
it's
be
coming.
back to you. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the district of distinction, I think, is the next step.
Yeah, and that should be, but again, if you let us know what we need to do.
Yeah, Jim is the last one that has something, and Mike needs to go through all of them.
Right, and Jim doesn't have all of them yet.
Jim has
One.
one more.
And when is that one?
Yeah,
you
we'll
know,
let you
so
know.
that we can be compliant, that'd be a great thing.
Have one in Maui.
Yeah, that'll happen, that'll happen, yeah. I think, I'm all done. So if we're all done, we're gonna move into closed session. Do I need a motion to do that, Counselor?
Yes.
I move, we move into closed session?
Second. All in favor?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you.